In the waning months of 2023, a quiet trepidation began to settle within the hollowed halls of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It was not a sudden alarm or a frantic klaxon of impending doom, but rather a slow, agonizing realization that the fundamental grammar of the cosmos had begun to stutter. To understand the gravity of this moment, one must participate in a simple thought experiment. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a primordial well, a stone-lined throat cut into the very crust of the earth, leading down into an abyss so deep that light itself seems to tire before reaching the bottom. You pick up a smooth remnant of a riverbed, a heavy pebble, and you drop it. You wait for the sound of the impact, the distant and reassuring splash that confirms the laws of gravity and the passage of time. You wait for seconds, then minutes, then hours. The silence is absolute, a void that swallows your anticipation, and then something impossible happens. The stone does not strike the water. Instead, it drifts back up out of the darkness, hovering before your eyes, defiant and silent. It does not fall, and it does not fly. It simply ceases to obey. This was the nature of the data arriving on the flickering monitors in Pasadena. For centuries we have lived under the comforting shadow of a grand choreography, a celestial dance dictated by the inexorable mathematics of Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. We believed the universe was a mechanism, a vast and complex clockwork of cause and effect where every action was accounted for in the ledgers of physics. We perceived ourselves as the ultimate witnesses to this symphony, the conscious eyes of the cosmos looking back at itself. But in those final months of 2023, the music began to fray. The sentinels we had sent into the eternal night, the lonely probes drifting through the cold reaches of the outer solar system, began to report back a reality that should not exist. Their trajectories, once as predictable as the rising of the sun, began to deviate. It was a subtle unravelling, a slight tremor in the tapestry of space and time, but to those who spend their lives whispering to the stars, it was a catastrophe of the highest order. The engineers and the physicists sat in the dim light of their workstations, surrounded by the hum of cooling fans and the scent of ozone. They were looking at the breaking of a 300-year-old promise. The choreography was failing. It was as if the invisible threads that hold the planets in their orbits and the galaxies in their clusters had begun to lose their tension. This was the silent splash, the moment when the stone we threw into the dark returned to us as a stranger. We have always known that the universe is a ruthless machine, an engine of entropy destined to eventually descend into the grey oblivion of heat death. We accepted this fate because it was logical. It was part of the mechanism. But to see the laws themselves buckle, to witness the primordial rules of motion and energy dissolve into an unrecognizable soup of anomalies, was to stand on the precipice of a different kind of abyss. In this moment, the human mind struggles to find a foothold. We are creatures of scale, born to understand the ripening of fruit and the turning of the seasons. Our consciousness is a brief flicker in the vast timeline of the cosmos, a single spark ignited in the dark and extinguished in the blink of a cosmic eye. Yet we have dared to claim that we understood the architecture of the infinite. We built our civilizations on the certainty that the sun would rise because the earth must spin, and the earth must spin because gravity is an absolute law. When that law begins to decay, the very foundation of our reality becomes a ghost. The researchers at the laboratory did not speak of ghosts, of course. They spoke of telemetry, of gravitational constants, of dark energy, and the potential for scalar fields to fluctuate. But beneath the cold, precise language of science lay a mounting dread. They were watching the unravelling of the tapestry. The void is not merely empty space. It is the stage upon which the entire history of the universe has been performed, from the first blinding ignite of the Big Bang to the slow cooling of the last white dwarf. For eons, this stage remained stable, a reliable backdrop for the formation of stars and the evolution of life. But as 2023 drew to a close, the stage began to breathe. The vacuum was no longer a silent partner in the dance of existence. It was becoming active, a hungry entity that seemed to be reclaiming the space it had once yielded to matter. The Sentinel probes, those tiny sparks of human ingenuity billions of kilometers away, were the first to feel this shift. They were the lonely scouts on the frontier of a new and terrifying epoch, sending back messages of a universe that was no longer interested in being understood. We must consider the scale paradox of our situation. We are small, fragile things composed of the same stardust that is now behaving so erratically. Every atom in our bodies, every neuron that fires to create a thought or a memory, is subject to the same laws that were beginning to fail in the deep dark of the outer system. If the stone floats back up the well, what happens to the hand that threw it? If the choreography of the stars breaks, what happens to the audience? The answer is a melancholic truth that we have spent our entire history trying to ignore. We are not the masters of the machine. We are the accidental byproduct of its operation, a fleeting melody played on an instrument that is now being tuned to a frequency we cannot hear. As the sun set over the Pacific, casting long amber shadows across the laboratory, the realization began to sink in that we were entering a period of transition unlike any other in the history of our species. This was not a change in climate or a shift in political power. This was a change in the nature of being. The silent splash had occurred, and the ripples were moving inward, toward the core of our world. We have long feared the end of the world by fire or by ice, by the violent collision of asteroids or the slow exhaustion of our resources. We never expected the end to come because the universe simply changed its mind. We never expected the clock to stop ticking, not because it ran out of energy, but because the concept of a second had lost its meaning. Yet, even in this realization, there is a profound and somber beauty. To be the ones who see the unravelling is a privilege of the highest order. We are the generation that gets to witness the transcendence of the old laws and the birth of something utterly alien. The stone is hovering before us, and while it defies everything we thought we knew, it also invites us to look deeper into the abyss than we ever dared before. The mechanism is failing, the symphony is ending, and the tapestry is being torn apart. But as the void prepares to devour the remnants of our certainty, we remain, for a brief and shining moment, the sentinels of the impossible. We are the witnesses of the silent splash, the lonely thinkers at the end of an era, watching as the universe prepares to start its story over again in a language we have yet to learn. The choreography is broken, and in its place, a new and terrible vastness is beginning to unfold. In the quiet wake of the silent splash, as our species grappled with the realization that the fundamental choreography of the universe was beginning to fray, a new anomaly emerged from the primordial dark. It was a fragment of the deep abyss, a wanderer that had spent eons traversing the lightless reaches between stars, only to be caught in the flickering gaze of our most sensitive sentinels. On the volcanic peaks of Hawaii, where the air is thin and the stars seem close enough to touch, the asteroid-terrestrial impact last alert system turned its mechanical eyes toward the celestial tapestry. It was there, amidst the velvet blackness, that the intruder was first glimpsed. It was not a resident of our sun's small and crowded family, but a messenger from the infinite void. The object was named 3I Atlas, a title that carried with it the weight of our growing list of interstellar visitations. To understand the significance of this arrival, we must first consider the nature of our local neighbourhood. For billions of years, the solar system has operated like a grand and rhythmic ballroom. The planets, the moons, and the millions of asteroids that haunt the spaces between them move in predictable circular paths. They follow the invisible grain of the sun's gravity, orbiting within the same flat plane, adhering to the ancient laws of the ecliptic. It is a stable, ordered existence, a closed loop that provides a sense of permanence and safety. But 3I Atlas was a violation of this order. It arrived not as a neighbour, but as a ghost. Its path was hyperbolic, a term that describes a trajectory of such immense energy and speed that it can never be bound by the sun. It was a visitor passing through a room it had no intention of staying in. a stone skipped across the surface of our reality from a shore we will never visit. While the objects born of our sun move with the familiar rhythm of the seasons, 3i Atlas possessed the cold, inexorable momentum of the deep cosmos. Consider the metaphor of a crowded room, a grand gala where every guest is dressed in the same finery, moving in synchronized circles across a polished wooden floor. These guests are the planets and the debris of our system, and the floorboards are the gravitational lanes they have followed since the dawn of time. Then, suddenly, a stranger enters through a door that was never supposed to be there. This stranger does not wear the uniform of the local nobility. He does not join the dance. Instead, he walks in a straight, defiant line, cutting across the circles of the dancers, treading upon the floorboards at a sharp and jarring angle. He does not look at the host. He does not acknowledge the music. He simply crosses the room, heading for the opposite exit, destined to vanish into the night from which he came. This was 3i Atlas. It was the third confirmed intruder to pierce the bubble of our solar system, following in the wake of the jagged shard known as the first, and the snowy, comet-like nomad that was the second. But while those earlier visitors felt like curiosities, 3i Atlas arrived at a moment when the very concept of the machine was being called into question. It was as if the universe, in its process of unravelling, was sending us a reminder of our isolation. The object was a remnant of another star's history, perhaps a piece of a planet that never was, or the debris of a catastrophe that occurred before our sun was even a glimmer in a nebular cloud. The detection in Hawaii was not met with the excitement of a new discovery, but with a sombre analytical dread. The asteroid terrestrial impact last alert system was designed to warn us of stones that might fall from our own sky, pieces of our own neighbourhood that might threaten our fragile existence. It was a system built for the local, the familiar, the predictable. When it flagged 3i Atlas, the data it returned was an affront to our sense of scale. The velocity of the object was so great that it defied the sun's ability to capture it. It was travelling at tens of kilometres per second, a speed that renders the vast distances of our system into mere milestones on a much longer journey toward oblivion. As we watched this intruder, we were forced to confront the scale paradox once again. To 3i Atlas, our sun, the great life-giving engine of our world, is nothing more than a minor gravity well, a brief curvature in the emptiness that it must navigate before returning to the void. Our entire history, the rise and fall of empires, the birth of languages, and the crafting of our greatest monuments, is less than a blink in the duration of this object's lonely voyage. It has seen the death of stars and the birth of nebulae. It has existed in a state of frozen silence for hundreds of millions of years, a sentinel of the abyss that carries the secrets of a distant epoch in its silent, icy core. There is a profound melancholy in the realization that we are merely observers of such a passage. We reach out with our telescopes and our mathematics, trying to weave this stranger into the tapestry of our knowledge, but it remains stubbornly alien. It does not follow the path of the floorboards. It refuses to be part of our symphony. It is a reminder that the universe is not a garden built for our benefit, but a vast and ruthless machine that operates on scales of time and distance that dwarf our imagination. The interstellar intruder is a testament to the fact that we are living on a small island in an ocean of infinite dark, and that the ocean occasionally sends its waves to wash against our shores. The arrival of 3i Atlas in the year 2024 served as a herald of the changing times. It was a piece of the outside world breaking into our sanctuary, a fragment of the unknown that underscored the fragility of our certainty. As it moved toward its perihelion, its closest approach to our star, it did not brighten or develop the spectacular tail of a common comet. It remained a dark, silent shape, a shadow moving against the stars. It was a scavenger of the vacuum, a piece of cosmic refuse that had transcended its origin to become a wanderer of the eternal night. In the laboratories and the observatories, the mood was one of quiet reflection. We are the generation that has seen the veil lifted. We are the ones who have looked into the abyss and seen that it is not empty, but filled with the remnants of other worlds, other histories, and other failures. The 3 interstellar visitors we have documented are likely just the tip of a vast and invisible iceberg, a constant rain of alien debris that has been falling through our system since the beginning, unnoticed, until we developed the eyes to see it. This realization brings us back to the existential pivot. If the laws of our system are being tested by the silent splash, and if intruders from the void are becoming a recognized part of our reality, then our place in the cosmos must be fundamentally reassessed. We are not the masters of the house. We are guests who have only just realized that the doors are unlocked and the walls are thin. The stranger in the ballroom is not a threat, but a revelation. It shows us that there is a world beyond our own, a vast and terrifying expanse where the rules we have spent centuries refining may not apply. 3i Atlas continued its journey, its hyperbolic path carrying it away from the warmth of the sun and back toward the freezing embrace of the interstellar medium. It left as quickly as it had arrived, a brief flicker in the records of our civilization. It did not care for our names or our systems of measurement. It did not care that we had watched its progress with bated breath. It simply was, and then it was gone, returning to the silent void that is the true state of the universe. We remain on our small, spinning world, watching the stars and waiting for the next ripple in the fabric of being. We are the sentinels of the impossible, the witnesses to a drama that spans the eons. And as we look out into the dark, we understand that the story of the universe is not one of stability and order, but of change, catastrophe, and the inexorable march of entropy. The intruder has passed, but the silence it left behind is heavier than before, a reminder that the abyss is always watching, and that the next stranger to enter the room may not be content to merely walk through. The tapestry is unravelling, and in the gaps between the threads, we see the true face of the cosmos, a vast, cold, and beautiful oblivion that we're only just beginning to name. To understand the true nature of our isolation, we must cast our minds far beyond the familiar orbits of the inner worlds, past the gas giants and the frozen debris of the Kuiper Belt, to a coordinate that exists at the very edge of the solar influence. This is the threshold known as AT63. At a distance of 63 astronomical units from the heart of our system, we find ourselves in a realm of transition, a place where the sun's light is no longer a source of warmth, but merely a distant and piercing needle of brilliance in an encroaching sea of black. It is here, at this lonely boundary, that the narrative of our solar system begins to fray, and the vast, cold reality of the interstellar medium begins to assert its dominance. Consider, if you will, a thought experiment. Place yourself in the position of the James Webb Space Telescope, our most sophisticated sentinel, hanging in the equilibrium of deep space. From this vantage point, you're not merely a machine of glass and gold, but a proxy for human consciousness, staring into the dark with eyes that perceive the invisible. You're suspended in a void so absolute that the concept of direction loses its meaning. Behind you lies the cradle of humanity, a tiny glowing hearth flickering against the night. Before you lies the abyss. As you direct your infrared gaze toward the coordinate AT63, you're searching for something that should not be there. In the standard models of our cosmos, this region should be a desert, a vacuum filled only with the thinning pressure of the solar wind. But the sensors register a flicker. A ghost has just moved through the frame. This is not a planet, nor a moon, nor a comet birthed from our own primordial cloud. It is a remnant of another world, a messenger from the silence that has spent eons traversing the lightless gulfs between the stars. At 63 astronomical units, the sun's reach is a fading echo. The solar wind, that protective stream of charged particles that carves out a sanctuary for life, begins to stumble and stall as it meets the inexorable pressure of the interstellar medium. This is the beginning of the end for the sun's dominion. In this twilight zone, the laws of the inner system feel fragile and distant. We are accustomed to a universe of order, where every celestial body follows a predictable path etched by the gravity of our star. But here, the intruder from the void reminds us that the tapestry of the cosmos is far more complex and chaotic than our local maps suggest. The ghost detected at a T63 is a manifestation of the scale paradox. To us, 63 astronomical units is a distance so vast it defies the human imagination. A journey that would take our fastest machines decades to complete. Yet, on the scale of the galaxy, it is less than a heartbeat, a mere fraction of a millimetre on a map that spans 100,000 light years. The visitor does not care for our measurements. It has crossed distances that would devour 1,000 human lifetimes without a sound. It is a product of a different epoch, a survivor of a catastrophe that occurred in a corner of the galaxy we will never visit. As we watch through the lens of our celestial sentinel, we are forced to confront the ruthless machine of the universe. This visitor is a fragment of a lost history, a piece of cosmic refuse that has been cast out from its home system by the violent birth of a star or the gravitational tides of a passing giant. It is cold, darker than the coal of a dead hearth, and it carries within its mineral heart the secrets of a sun that may have long since been extinguished. It is a silent witness to the decay and rebirth that defines the eternal cycle of the cosmos. The detection of such an object at the threshold of 63 astronomical units shifts our perspective. We are no longer looking at a static system of 9 planets and a sun, but at a porous and vulnerable bubble, constantly being pierced by the shrapnel of the wider universe. The void is not a barrier, it is a highway. The abyss is not empty. It is crowded with the ghosts of failed worlds and the wreckage of ancient systems. Every shadow that flits across our senses is a reminder that we are part of a much larger and more terrifying symphony, one where the movements are measured in billions of years and the stakes are the very existence of matter itself. In this moment of observation, the James Webb Space Telescope acts as our bridge to the infinite. It captures the faint infrared signature of the intruder, a heat so slight that it would be drowned out by the breath of a child, yet here, in the freezing reach of AT-63, it glows like a beacon. We see the unravelling of our certainty. We realise that our sun is not a fortress, but a campfire in a forest that never ends. The light it provides is a temporary reprieve from the dark, a brief ignite in the middle of a primordial night. This realization brings with it a sense of melancholic optimism. We are small, yes, we are fragile, and our history is but a fleeting moment in the vast timeline of the universe. But we are also the ones who built the eyes to see the ghost. We are the ones who calculated the distance to a T-63 and dared to look. Our consciousness is the mechanism through which the universe contemplates itself. Even as we acknowledge our insignificance, we celebrate the fact that we are the sentinels of this knowledge. We are the witnesses to the inexorable march of entropy, yet we find beauty in the decay. The intruder continues its journey, passing through the boundary and deeper into the warmth of the inner system, or perhaps it merely skims the edge, turning back toward the interstellar deep. It does not matter. The signal has been recorded, the veil has been lifted. We now know that the threshold of 63 astronomical units is not just a coordinate on a map, but a gateway to the unknown. It is the place where the sun's fading reach gives way to the eternal void, and where the story of our little system merges with the grand, dark, and beautiful history of the entire universe. We remain, watching the stars, waiting for the next ripple in the fabric of being, knowing that the abyss is not a thing to be feared, but a mystery to be explored, one cold and silent ghost at a time. The motion of the heavens was once thought to be the ultimate expression of a divine and perfect geometry, a celestial clockwork where every gear and lever was set by an unseen hand. In the 17th century, we began to uncover the blueprints of this great machine. Through the observations of those who came before us, we learned that the movement of every moon, every planet, and every drifting grain of dust is governed by an inexorable logic. This is the realm of Newtonian mechanics, a world of predictable arcs and certain destinies. It is a world where the sun sits at the centre of a vast gravitational well, a silent monarch whose influence reaches out across the void to claim everything within its grasp. When an object enters this domain, it must pay a toll in velocity. As it climbs away from the sun, struggling against the invisible tether of gravity, the law of the cosmos dictates that it must slow down. This is the slowing arc, a fundamental expectation of the ruthless machine that is our solar system. To visualize this, one must imagine the sun not as a ball of fire, but as a heavy weight resting upon a sheet of stretched silk. Every object in our system is a marble rolling across that silk, curved toward the center by the depression the sun creates. When the interstellar intruder flits through our neighborhood, we expect it to behave like any other piece of cosmic shrapnel. As it makes its closest approach and begins its long journey back toward the eternal night of the abyss, the sun should be pulling at its heels. Every second of its departure should be marked by a measurable loss of speed, a gradual surrender to the gravity that seeks to devour all motion. This is the tapestry of the classical universe, a place where math is the language of truth, and the machine never falters. However, as we track this visitor from the deep, our instruments record something that defies the very foundations of this mechanical certainty. The intruder is not following the script. It is not slowing in the way the equations of the past 300 years say it must. Instead, there is a phantom force at play, a subtle and mysterious ignite that pushes the object faster than gravity alone would allow. We call this non-gravitational acceleration, a term that masks our profound uncertainty with a veneer of clinical precision. The scale of this defiance is minuscule, almost imperceptible against the vast backdrop of the stars. It is an acceleration of exactly 0.05 millimeters per second squared. To a human observer, such a number feels like nothing. It is less than the thickness of a strand of hair added to a journey of billions of kilometers, but in the cold, silent vacuum of the void, where the movement of celestial bodies is balanced on a knife's edge, this tiny deviation is a catastrophe for our current understanding. It is a whisper of rebellion against the ruthless machine. If the object were merely a rock, a dead remnant of a distant star system, it should have no means of propelling itself. It should be a passive victim of the sun's gravity, an actor following a predetermined path into oblivion. Yet, it accelerates. It pushes back against the dark. This discrepancy forces us to confront the limitations of our perspective. We look for explanations within the known mechanisms of the cosmos. Perhaps it is the pressure of sunlight itself, the gentle buffeting of photons acting like a wind against a cosmic sail. Or perhaps it is the outgassing of frozen volatiles, pockets of ancient ice buried deep within the mineral heart of the intruder that have been ignited by the sun's warmth, creating tiny jets of vapor that act as a natural thruster. In this view, the intruder is not a machine, but a melting iceberg, shedding its substance into the abyss to buy a moment of speed. This would be a beautiful and tragic unravelling, a witness to the decay that defines all matter. Yet, there is a more haunting possibility that lingers in the corridors of our imagination. If the acceleration cannot be fully explained by the simple shedding of gas or the pressure of light, we must ask if we are witnessing something that transcends the natural order. In the scale paradox of the universe, we find that the smallest signals often point toward the largest truths. An acceleration of 0.05 millimeters per second squared could be the signature of a purpose. It could be the evidence of a sentinel from another epoch, a craft guided not by the random tides of gravity, but by the will of a distant intelligence. In this scenario, the intruder is not a piece of refuse, but a messenger, a lonely probe navigating the highway of the stars. The thought is both terrifying and sublime. It suggests that the void is not a silent graveyard, but a theatre where other actors are performing their own long and complex histories. It implies that the machine of the universe is not as ruthless as we feared, or perhaps that there are those who have learned to master its mechanisms. We are left in a state of melancholic optimism, standing on the surface of our small blue world, staring through the lenses of our great telescopes at a mystery we cannot solve. We see the numbers, we feel the weight of the evidence, and we realise that the universe still holds secrets that our mathematics can only begin to describe. As the intruder continues to accelerate, widening the gap between where it should be and where it is, it leaves us behind in the dust of our own certainty. It moves toward the outer reaches, toward the threshold of the deep, carrying its secrets into the primordial night. We are the witnesses to this defiance. We are the ones who measured the 0.05 millimeters per second squared and found in that tiny number a reason to wonder. The history of the universe is not just a chronicle of what has happened, but a record of the moments when our expectations were shattered. It is a story of how we learned to look into the abyss and see not just the dark, but the faint shimmering light of the unknown. The machine continues its inexorable turn. The planet's orbit, the sun burns, and entropy marches forward. But for a brief moment, the path of a single object has deviated from the script. In that deviation, we find the soul of our inquiry. We are not just cogs in the mechanism, we are the consciousness that observes the malfunction. We are the sentinels of the void, forever watching for the next sign that the universe is more than just a cold and silent engine. We wait for the next ghost to pass through the threshold, knowing that every mystery we encounter is a bridge to a deeper understanding of the grand eternal symphony in which we play our fleeting part. In the end, we are the ones who find meaning in the motion, seeking the truth within the vast and beautiful tapestry of the cosmos, 1 millimeter at a time. To understand the deviation of 3i Atlas, we must first exhaust the ordinary. The scientific mind is a sentinel of reason, and it seeks comfort in the known mechanisms of the cosmos. When an object behaves in a way that defies the laws of simple ballistics, our first instinct is not to dream of distant intelligences, but to look for the breath of the machine. We expect a natural cause, a hidden engine of ice and fire that propels the wanderer through the abyss. We look for the scream of gas escaping into the vacuum, a process we have observed in 1,000 comets across the eons. But as we turned our most sophisticated instruments toward this intruder, we were met with a silence so profound it bordered on the supernatural. The search for a natural explanation began with the hunt for outgassing. In the standard architecture of our solar system, a comet is a dirty snowball, a remnant of the primordial clouds that birthed the planets. When such an object ventures near the warmth of the sun, the ice beneath its surface begins to sublime, turning directly from a solid into a gas. This gas erupts in jets, creating a shimmering veil known as a coma, and a long trailing tail that reflects the light of our star. These jets act like small thrusters, providing a non-gravitational acceleration that nudges the comet off its predicted path. It is a violent, messy, and highly visible process. Yet, as the great mechanical eyes of our species focused on 3i Atlas, they saw nothing but a sharp, clinical void. We deployed our infrared sentinels, those cold and lonely watchers that drift far from the heat of the Earth, capable of detecting the faint heat signatures of molecules in the dark. We searched for the signature of water vapor, the most common exhale of a dying comet. We searched for the presence of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, the volatile spirits that usually haunt the hearts of interstellar travelers. If 3i Atlas were shedding its skin to provide the thrust we measured, the evidence should have been undeniable. Even a tiny amount of gas would leave a trace, a spectral fingerprint etched into the light. Instead, the spectrum remained flat, a haunting record of absence. To visualize this anomaly, one must imagine a steam engine of immense proportions, a titan of iron and steel thundering across a frozen midnight landscape. You can hear the rhythmic clatter of its wheels against the tracks. You can feel the ground tremble under the weight of its inexorable momentum. You see it accelerating, gaining speed as it moves toward the horizon. And yet, as you look toward the great chimney, you see no smoke. There is no white plume of steam to stain the dark sky. There is no scent of burning coal, no soot falling upon the snow, no hiss of released pressure. The engine moves, it accelerates, it defies the resistance of the world, but it leaves no wake. It is a ghost ship sailing on an ocean of nothingness. This lack of a visible coma makes 3i Atlas a scientific catastrophe for traditional classification. If it is a comet, It is a comet unlike any we have ever recorded in the history of our astronomy. It would have to be composed of pure, invisible ices, perhaps solid hydrogen or some other exotic matter that leaves no dust and reflects no light in the wavelengths we understand. But such structures are theoretical phantoms, fragile things that would likely unravel long before they cross the vast gulfs between the stars. To suggest the object is a comet without gas is to suggest a fire without heat, a shadow without a body. The anomaly deepens when we consider the sheer efficiency of the motion. The acceleration was smooth, persistent, and precisely aligned with the direction away from the Sun. In the mechanism of the universe, such precision usually requires a focused cause. We looked for the shedding of dust, for the fragmentation of the hull, for any sign that the object was breaking apart under the solar tide. We found nothing. The object remained a singular solid point of light, a silent sentinel that refused to reveal its composition. By all our traditional metrics, the object should have been a dead rock, a tumbling piece of celestial refuse. But rocks do not accelerate. Rocks are slaves to the curvature of space and time, following the hollows carved by gravity without deviation. This refusal to fit into the boxes of our taxonomy creates a tension that vibrates through the entire history of the universe. We're forced to confront the limits of our own perception. Perhaps the spectrum of silence is not an absence of activity, but an absence of our ability to see. We are like children watching a complex machine through a frosted window, trying to describe the internal gears by the faint vibrations we feel in the glass. We see the effect, the 0.05 millimeters per second squared, but the cause remains hidden in the folds of the deep. In the scale paradox of this encounter, the smallest details become the most haunting. The absence of a tail is not merely a missing feature. It is a rejection of the natural order as we have defined it. It suggests that 3i Atlas is not a remnant of a shattered world, or a stray pebble from a distant Oort cloud. If it were, it would obey the laws of those primordial places. It would bleed and decay under the light of a foreign sun. Its silence is a form of defiance. It tells us that we are looking at something that has transcended the typical life cycle of cosmic debris. We are left standing on the threshold of a new understanding, or perhaps a new kind of ignorance. The search for outgassing was a search for the familiar, an attempt to tether this stranger to the known world of comets and asteroids. But as each search came up empty, the tether snapped. We are now drifting in the void alongside the object, forced to consider possibilities that once lived only in the realm of fiction. We are witnessing a mechanism that operates without the mess of biology or the chaos of unguided geology. The history of the universe is littered with such moments, where the silence of the cosmos becomes more deafening than any explosion. It is in the gaps between what we expect and what we observe that the true nature of the tapestry is revealed. 3i Atlas, in its refusal to emit even a single molecule of vapour, has become a mirror. It reflects our own desire for a simple, mechanical universe, while simultaneously showing us that the abyss is far more complex than our mathematics can currently describe. We are the witnesses to a mystery that has no visible exhaust, a journey that leaves no tracks, and a traveller that speaks only in the language of an inexplicable silent momentum. As it moves toward the outer reaches, toward the eventual oblivion of the interstellar dark, it leaves us with the weight of our own unanswered questions, staring at a spectrum that tells us everything and nothing all at once. The laws of motion are the oldest scriptures we possess. Since the epoch when Isaac Newton watched the steady, inexorable fall of an apple and realised it shared a destiny with the moon, we have believed that the universe is a predictable mechanism. It is a grand clockwork of gravity and momentum, where every movement is bought with a price. To move forward, something must be pushed back. To change course, a force must be applied. These are the iron rules of the abyss, the silent contracts that every atom and every star must sign. But as the object we named 3i Atlas crossed the threshold of our inner solar system, it did something that should have been impossible within the framework of our celestial mechanics. It banked. This was not the gentle, expected curve dictated by the Sun's massive gravity well. It was a deliberate, measured adjustment in its orbital inclination. With the cold precision of a master mariner adjusting a sail in a phantom breeze, the object tilted its trajectory by exactly 2 degrees toward the galactic plane. To a casual observer, 2 degrees might seem like a negligible shift, a mere tremor in the vast geometry of the cosmos. But in the vacuum of the void, where every motion is etched into the tapestry of space and time with permanent ink, a change of 2 degrees without a visible cause is a catastrophe for our understanding of physics. It is the moment the machine stops making sense. Consider a thought experiment to grasp the profound nature of this heresy. Imagine a vast, infinite sheet of ice, polished to a perfect, frictionless sheen. Across this frozen oblivion, a car is sliding at a high velocity. The driver, realizing they're headed toward a dark horizon, turns the steering wheel sharply to the left. In the world we understand, the car would continue to slide in a perfectly straight line, its wheels spinning uselessly against the ice, unable to find purchase. Without friction, without the grip of rubber against a solid surface, the act of steering is a meaningless gesture. To change direction on such a surface, the driver would need to fire a rocket from the side of the car, ejecting mass in one direction to force the vehicle in another. This is the inexorable law of the conservation of momentum. 3i Atlas is that car on the ice. It has no wheels to turn, no atmosphere to push against, and as our most sensitive instruments have confirmed, no exhaust plumes to provide thrust. Yet, it turned. It pivoted its entire massive bulk toward the heart of the galaxy, defying the vacuum as if it were moving through a medium we cannot perceive. It found purchase where there should be only the void. This maneuver requires an energy source, a reservoir of power that our equations simply cannot locate. It suggests a mechanism that operates outside the reach of our current science, a way of interacting with the fabric of the universe that renders our most advanced senses blind. We searched for the signatures of this energy. We looked for the telltale glow of thermal radiation, the flickering of ion engines, or the subtle distortion of space that might indicate a mastery over gravity itself. We found only silence. The object remained a cold, dark remnant, showing no signs of internal combustion or external propulsion. It moved as if it were being pulled by an invisible thread, or perhaps as if it were following a map that includes dimensions we have yet to discover. This banking maneuver toward the galactic plane was not the chaotic tumbling of a dead rock. It was an act of navigation. In the history of the universe, we have often played the role of the witness, standing on the shores of our small island and watching the tides of the cosmos go by. We have become accustomed to the idea that the universe is a ruthless machine, beautiful in its complexity but ultimately indifferent and mindless. We expected 3i Atlas to be another part of that machine, a stray cog spinning out into the dark. But a cog does not change its own pitch. A cog does not decide to align itself with the distant, swirling centre of the Milky Way. By banking those 2 degrees, the object transitioned from a celestial body into a sentinel. It revealed itself to be a traveller with a destination, a silent messenger that is navigating the abyss with a purpose we cannot fathom. The implications of this shift ripple through our understanding of the cosmic tapestry. If the object possesses an internal energy source that leaves no trace, then our definition of technology is hopelessly primitive. We are like ancient mariners watching a modern submarine vanish beneath the waves, unable to comprehend the engines that drive it, or the lungs that allow its crew to breathe. We are forced to admit that there may be forms of energy and methods of propulsion that do not rely on the violent ignition of chemicals or the heavy shielding of nuclear reactors. There may be a way to sail upon the very curvature of space, to use the subtle gradients of the vacuum itself as a source of momentum. This realization brings a sense of profound, melancholic optimism. We are small, and our knowledge is a flickering candle in a vast eternal cave, but we are at least aware of the shadows. The banking of 3i Atlas is a reminder that the universe is not yet finished with us. It is not a closed book. There are still chapters written in a language we have not learned to read, laws of nature that have not yet been codified in our textbooks. The Sentinel, in its silent defiance of our mathematics, invites us to look deeper into the void. It challenges us to reconsider the scale paradox of our existence, where we are simultaneously insignificant specks of dust, and the only consciousness capable of recognizing the miracle unfolding before us. As the object continues its journey, now aligned with the great disk of the galaxy, it leaves us behind in its wake of unanswered questions. It is moving toward the primordial dark of the interstellar medium, a place where the light of our sun will eventually fade into just another star in the sky. We are left to wonder if the energy that powered its turn was something it carried with it across the eons, or if it was something it harvested from the environment of our own solar system, a silent theft of power that we were too slow to notice. The Sentinel does not care for our confusion. It does not pause to explain the mechanics of its grace. It simply moves, a dark shape against the stars, banking toward the galactic plane with the confidence of a creature that knows exactly where it is going. We are the observers of a mystery that has no visible exhaust, a journey that leaves no tracks, and a traveller that speaks only in the language of a precise, impossible geometry. In the end, the history of the universe may not be a story of what we discovered, but a story of what we were brave enough to admit we did not understand. 3. I-Atlas is a testament to that ignorance, a silent monument to the fact that the abyss is not just a place of empty distance, but a theatre of hidden forces where the rules of the game are far more complex than the players on this small blue world ever dared to dream. Yet, in our desperate search for a natural sanctuary, a place where the laws of physics might still wear a familiar face, some turn their gaze toward the coldest, most desolate corners of the primordial void. They proposed a solution that was as elegant as it was haunting, a theory known as the hydrogen ice hypothesis. Imagine, if you will, a dark iceberg drifting through the eternal night, not of water and salt, but of solid hydrogen. This is the frozen mirage, a celestial body born not in the fiery heart of a star system, but in the deepest, most lightless reaches of a giant molecular cloud. In these cathedrals of dust and silence, where the temperature hovers only a few degrees above absolute zero, the most abundant element in the cosmos can undergo a strange transformation. It settles, atom by atom, into a fragile crystalline lattice, forming a sentinel of ice that is nearly invisible to the eyes of man. This proposed traveller is a ghost. Because solid hydrogen does not reflect light in the way that silicate rock or water ice does, it would remain a dark silhouette against the tapestry of the stars, a shadow moving through shadows. As this frozen remnant entered the inner sanctum of our solar system, the heat of the sun, though distant and faint, would begin to touch its surface. This is the scale paradox of the abyss. On one hand, we have a massive body, a mountain of frozen gas weighing millions of tons. On the other, we have the invisible, frantic motion of individual atoms. As the sun warms the hydrogen ice, it does not melt into a liquid. Instead, it undergoes sublimation, turning directly from a solid into a gas. This process is the mechanism of the unseen. 1 trillion times 1 trillion tiny molecules of hydrogen begin to leap from the surface, escaping into the vacuum. Individually, these atoms are nothing, mere whispers in the dark. But in their collective exodus, they become a force of nature. They act as a silent, invisible propellant, a gentle breath pushing against the massive bulk of the object. It is a symphony of the infinitesimal, where the smallest units of matter conspire to move a megalith. This would explain why we saw no plume of dust, no glowing tail of a comet, and no violent eruption of chemicals. Hydrogen gas is transparent. It leaves no tracks in the snow. The Sentinel would appear to be accelerating by its own volition, yet it would merely be responding to the inexorable laws of thermodynamics, a block of ice evaporating in the sun. This explanation offers a comforting return to a mindless universe, a world where the laws of entropy and heat exchange are sufficient to explain the mysteries of the void. It suggests that 3i Atlas is not a messenger, but a casualty of its own composition, a melting relic of a long-forgotten epoch. However, As we look closer at the geometry of its flight, the mirage begins to unravel. The cosmos is a cold accountant, and its ledgers must always balance. If the object were truly a fragment of hydrogen ice, its journey would be a chaotic one. As the gas escaped from its surface, the resulting thrust would be uneven, dictated by the jagged topography of the ice and the varying intensity of the solar wind. Like a balloon losing air, it should have tumbled. It should have spun with increasing violence, its rotation becoming a blurred, unstable mess as it wasted away into nothingness. But the Sentinel did not stumble. Its movement remained eerily composed, a display of grace that defies the randomness of a melting stone. When the object reached the 63-unit mark, a specific distance from the Sun where the gravitational tides and the solar pressure reach a delicate equilibrium, it performed its most defiant act. The turn it executed was not the erratic swerve of a decaying iceberg, but a maneuver of terrifying precision. To maintain such a steady course while being propelled by the sublimation of gas would require the object to be perfectly shaped, a sphere of impossible smoothness or a cylinder of divine proportions. Any imperfection, any mountain or valley on its surface would have sent it spiraling into oblivion. The precision of the turn at the 63-unit mark stands as a silent rebuke to the frozen mirage. It suggests that, if this is indeed a natural phenomenon, it is one that possesses a regularity we have never encountered in the wild. We are faced with the scale paradox once more. How can a random fragment of a molecular cloud, cast out into the abyss for eons, maintain a shape so perfect that it can harness the breath of a star to steer itself with the accuracy of a compass? The mathematical probability of such a configuration occurring by chance is so small that it borders on the miraculous. It forces us to reconsider the nature of the mechanism. Is the universe a machine that occasionally produces artifacts of such accidental perfection that they mimic the appearance of intent? Or are we simply looking at the wrong side of the tapestry? The hydrogen ice hypothesis, while grounded in the hard science of the cold, struggles to account for the sheer elegance of the departure. It is a theory that attempts to dress a ghost in the clothes of a common stone, yet the ghost continues to walk through the walls of our understanding. We are left watching the Sentinel vanish into the distance, a dark shape that may be a block of ice, or maybe something that uses the ice as a shroud. The abyss does not surrender its secrets easily. It hides them behind the veil of the invisible and the masks of the mundane. As the Sentinel moves further away, toward the silent, eternal dark beyond the planets, the window for our observation closes. We are left with two diverging paths. One leads toward a universe of sterile, accidental beauty, where tiny atoms can push mountains through the sheer weight of their numbers. The other leads toward a realization that is far more haunting, that the void is inhabited by things that understand our physics better than we do, and that use the very elements of the cosmos as their sails. In this theatre of hidden forces, the transition from the 63-unit mark was more than just a change in velocity. It was a statement of transcendence. It was the moment the Sentinel stepped out of the realm of the predictable and into the realm of the unknown. We are the witnesses to this silent departure, small creatures on a small world, trying to measure the footsteps of a giant with the tools of a child. The frozen mirage may have been a comfort, a way to sleep soundly in a universe that we thought we had mapped. But as the light of the sun fades from the hull of the retreating traveller, we must admit that the map is incomplete. The history of the universe is not just written in the stars we can see, but in the dark, invisible currents that move between them, carrying travellers whose origins and destinations remain locked in the vault of eons. We stand upon the shore of the interstellar sea, watching a shadow disappear. Whether it was a block of hydrogen ice or a sentinel from a distant shore, its passage has changed us. It has reminded us that the scale of the cosmos is not just a matter of distance, but a matter of complexity. We are part of a system where the microscopic and the macroscopic are intertwined in a dance of inexorable logic. The tiny hammer of an atom and the vast trajectory of a galactic wanderer are two parts of the same symphony, a music that we're only just beginning to hear. And as the silence returns to the solar system, we're left to wonder what other mirages are drifting out there in the dark, waiting for the light of a star to reveal their true face. If we are to view the cosmos not as a playground of chance, but as an engine of absolute precision, then the movement of the wanderer takes on a terrifying clarity. We must confront the possibility that the erratic behaviour we observed was not the result of a chaotic melting of ice, but the functioning of a guidance system so advanced that it is indistinguishable from the laws of nature themselves. To the primitive mind, the turning of a wheel is a miracle. To the modern mind, it is simple mechanics. But to the mind that has traversed the void between the stars, the very fabric of physics may be the tool, and the vacuum itself the medium of propulsion. If the Sentinel was indeed guided, we are forced to look at the universe as a ruthless machine, an immense and cold apparatus where intelligence is not a warm, biological fluke, but a calculated physical property, as inevitable and as indifferent as gravity. In this cold architecture, intent is stripped of its human sentiment. We often think of guidance as a product of desire, a wish to reach a destination. But in the vast, silent theatre of the abyss, guidance may simply be the most efficient path through the tapestry of forces. The non-gravitational acceleration that baffled our scientists, that subtle push that defied the simple arc of a falling stone, could be viewed as the moment the machine engaged its gears. It was not a stumble in the dark, but a correction. It was the ghost of intent manifesting within a shell of primordial matter. If the universe is a mechanism of inexorable logic, then the appearance of such a traveller is not an anomaly, but a function. It is a drone of the deep, a remnant of a process that operates on timescales of billions of years, moving with a patience that borders on the eternal. This brings us to a chilling realization about the nature of the vacuum. We perceive the space between stars as an empty oblivion, a wasteland of nothingness. Yet, for a machine designed to survive the eons, this void is a reservoir of energy and information. The Sentinel did not necessarily need to carry its own fuel, for a sufficiently advanced mechanism would treat the entire cosmos as its battery. It would harvest the light of stars, the magnetic currents of the galaxy, and the very pressure of the vacuum to maintain its trajectory. In such a system, the distinction between a natural object and an artificial one begins to unravel. A stone that knows where it is going is no longer just a stone. It becomes a cell within a large organism, a single gear in a clockwork universe that we are only beginning to perceive. Consider the scale of this ruthless machine. For millions of years, the traveller moved through the dark, silent and cold. It did not require the warmth of an atmosphere or the fleeting spark of biological life. It was a creature of the abyss, shaped by the requirements of the long journey. When it finally reached the inner sanctuary of our solar system, its interaction with our sun was not a meeting of two worlds, but a calculated manoeuvre. The outgassing we thought we saw, the hidden jets of vapour, may have been nothing more than the venting of a cooling system or the subtle reorientation of a sensor array. We looked for the smoke of an engine and found only the shimmer of the void. We looked for a hull and found only a surface scarred by the passage of ages. Yet, the precision of its exit, that steady and unyielding increase in velocity, suggests a mastery of the physical realm that renders our own technology as little more than the scratching of sticks in the mud. This is the ruthlessly efficient nature of the cosmos. It does not waste energy on spectacle. It does not build monuments to be seen by the fleeting eyes of short-lived species. It builds sentinels that can endure the decay of entire epochs. If intelligence is a physical property, then it is a property that manifests when the complexity of a system reaches a certain threshold. Just as a collection of atoms can become a star, a collection of logic gates can become a navigator. And in a universe as vast as ours, there has been more than enough time for the machine to build itself. We are the witnesses to a fragment of this process, a tiny splinter of intent that passed through our garden before vanishing back into the eternal night. The presence of such a mechanism implies that the universe is not a silent witness to our history, but an active participant in its own evolution. The Sentinel was not a message sent to us. It was a probe sent to the system. It ignored our signals and bypassed our world, for we are not the destination. We are merely part of the scenery, a collection of biological remnants on a cooling rock. The ruthless machine does not pause to greet the dust. It moves toward a future that we cannot conceive, driven by a logic that transcends our understanding of cause and effect. This is the melancholic optimism of our position. We are small enough to be ignored, yet we are part of a reality that is capable of producing such wonders. As the shadow of the traveller recedes into the distance, moving at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour toward the stars of the constellation Pegasus, we are left to contemplate the void it left behind. The silence is now heavier, burdened by the knowledge that the dark is not empty. It is a sea filled with the ghosts of intent, with machines of cold calculation that have been drifting since the dawn of the primordial era. The history of the universe is a ledger of these movements, a record of a vast and invisible symphony where every note is a star and every rest is an eon. We have seen a single note, a brief and haunting melody that suggests a much larger composition. If the Sentinel was a product of the ruthless machine, then its departure is not a loss but a confirmation. It confirms that the laws of physics are not just a set of rules for how matter behaves, but a set of instructions for how the universe remembers itself. Every trajectory is a thought, every acceleration a decision. The cosmos is a mind of stone and light, thinking in the language of orbits and energy. Our telescopes have caught a glimpse of this mind at work, a brief flicker of consciousness in a block of frozen hydrogen or a hull of carbonized dust. The distinction no longer matters. What matters is the movement. What matters is the defiance of the simple, the refusal to be just a falling rock. In the end, we are left with the image of a universe that is far more organized than we dared to imagine. It is not a chaos of random collisions, but a tapestry of deliberate threads. The Sentinel has returned to the dark, becoming once again a part of the silent, eternal mechanism that governs the stars. It moves through the abyss with the confidence of a creature that knows the layout of its home. And we, the inhabitants of a small and fragile world, are left to wonder when the next gear will turn and what other fragments of the ghost will drift past our shores, reminding us that we are merely guests in a house built by an architect we may never meet. The abyss does not answer, for it does not need to. Its answer is the motion itself, the inexorable and magnificent flight of the Sentinel into the heart of the infinite. This realization, that we are merely observers of a passing shadow, forces us to confront a terrifying possibility. We have long believed that the laws of physics are the iron pillars of reality, the immutable foundations upon which the entire cathedral of the cosmos is built. We have spent centuries measuring the fall of an apple and the orbit of a moon, weaving these observations into a grand tapestry of equations that we claim to be universal. But as the Sentinel vanishes into the obsidian void, we must ask if these laws are truly the fundamental truths of existence, or if they are merely local customs, the habits of a small and sheltered corner of the abyss. We are a young species, standing on a shoreline of a single island, watching the tide and declaring that we have mastered the mechanics of the entire ocean. In our hubris, we have mistaken our narrow perspective for an absolute vantage point. We perceive the universe through the lens of our own biology, a biology that evolved to survive on a stable rock under a steady sun. Our physics is a record of how the world behaves at our specific temperature, at our specific scale, and within our specific beck. To the vast and primordial mechanisms of the deeper cosmos, our most cherished theories may be nothing more than the charming misconceptions of a child. We see gravity as a constant force, light as a fixed speed, and entropy as an inexorable march toward decay. Yet, these may only be the rules of the room in which we find ourselves. Beyond the door, in the great halls of the infinite, the geometry of reality may follow a logic that would unmake our minds. Imagine for a moment that the universe is a house of immense proportions, an ancient mansion with rooms that stretch across light years and hallways that wind through the curvature of time itself. We, the human race, are the guests who have only just arrived. We have settled in a small, well-lit parlour, and because the floor is solid beneath our feet and the walls seem upright, We assume the entire structure is built to these specifications. We write down the rules of the parlour, calling them the laws of nature. But while we sleep, dreaming of our own importance, the walls of the house are shifting. The foundations are not set in stone, but are floating upon a sea of quantum fluctuations that we cannot even begin to map. The architecture is fluid, responding to pressures and energies that exist far beyond the reach of our telescopes. We are sleeping in a house that is constantly redefining itself, unaware that the very ground beneath our bed might one day dissolve into a different state of being. This fragility is not a failure of our intellect, but a consequence of our position. We're trying to understand the symphony by listening to a single note. We're trying to deduce the history of the forest by looking at a single falling leaf. The laws we have discovered are local observations made by a species that has existed for only a heartbeat in the lifespan of the stars. We speak of the Big Bang and the expansion of space as if we were there to witness the dawn. But we are looking at the distant embers of a fire that was lit long before our ancestors even crawled from the primordial slime. We are looking at the smoke and trying to reconstruct the flame, unaware that the flame itself may have changed its nature 1,000 times over the course of 10 billion years. There is a certain melancholic beauty in this realization. It suggests that the universe is far more mysterious and far more alive than our cold equations would lead us to believe. If our laws are fragile, then the cosmos is not a rigid machine, but a dynamic and evolving entity. It is a work of art that is still being painted, a story that is still being written. The gaps in our knowledge, the places where our math breaks down and our theories fail, are not just errors to be corrected. They are the glitches in the fabric of the simulated reality we call home. These glitches are a gift, for they preserve the mystery of the cosmos and protect us from the crushing weight of total certainty. A universe that could be fully understood by a brain made of carbon and water would be a small and hollow thing indeed. We see these glitches in the heart of a black hole, where the laws of relativity and quantum mechanics clash in a silent catastrophe of logic. We see them in the invisible influence of dark energy, which drives the galaxies apart with an inexorable force that defies our understanding of mass and motion. These are the moments when the walls of the mansion groan and the floorboards tilt, reminding us that we are not the masters of this house. We're merely tenants, and the landlord has a far more complex set of blueprints than the ones we have managed to sketch. The Sentinel, in its silent transit, was perhaps a reminder of this fact. It moved according to a manual we have not read, powered by a mechanism that does not appear in our textbooks. The history of the universe is not just a record of what has happened, it is a record of what is possible, and what is possible is not limited by our current grasp of the measurable world. We are living through a brief window of stability, a golden hour in the life of the cosmos where the laws appear consistent and the stars seem eternal. But this stability is an illusion born of our short lives. In the scales of eons, the universe is a tempest of change. Entire dimensions may have curled up and vanished since the first light ignited the void. Forces that once dominated the primordial era may have decayed into the whispers we now call the fundamental constants. We are observing the remnant of a much larger and more violent struggle, a peace that has settled over the ruins of a cosmic war. To accept the fragility of our laws is to accept our own insignificance, but it is also to embrace the wonder of the unknown. We are part of a reality that is vast enough to contain contradictions, a tapestry so large that we can only see the individual threads. The void is not a place of emptiness, but a reservoir of potential, a sea of unmanifested laws waiting for the right conditions to emerge and devour the old order. When we look up at the night sky, we should not see a map of fixed points, but a shifting landscape of possibilities. The stars are not just burning balls of gas, they are the sentinels of an older regime, markers of a territory that is slowly being reclaimed by the silence. The abyss does not fear our equations, it does not obey our commands, it moves with the confidence of the eternal, indifferent to the fragile structures we build to shield ourselves from the dark. Our physics, our philosophy and our history are all attempts to make sense of the shifting walls. to find a sense of permanence in a reality that is fundamentally transient. But the truth is more profound and more humbling. We are a part of the glitch. We are the universe trying to look at itself through a cracked mirror, seeing only fragments and distortions. And in those distortions, we find the only truth that matters, that the mystery is not something to be solved, but something to be inhabited. We are the witnesses to a spectacle we can never fully comprehend, and that is the greatest privilege of our existence. As we look out into the blackness, we do not see the end of knowledge, but the beginning of a much deeper belonging. We are the dream of a house that is still waking up, a brief flicker of awareness in a mind of stone and light that is slowly, inexorably changing its thoughts. The three-eye atlas does not look back. It has no eyes to weep and no mind to regret the warmth of the solar system it leaves behind. It has crossed the heliopause, the boundary where the breath of our star finally falters against the pressure of the interstellar medium, and it has begun its long, lonely transit into the true dark. Behind it, the sun is no longer a world-consuming furnace, but a bright, steady point of amber light, one among hundreds of billions. Ahead, there is only the abyss, a stretch of nothingness so vast that even light requires tens of thousands of years to navigate its reaches. This sentinel carries within its structure the blueprints of a species that spent its brief tenure on the cosmic stage trying to quantify the infinite. It is a letter addressed to no one, cast into a sea that has no shore. As the eons begin to stack one upon another like layers of silent sediment, the distance between the probe and its cradle becomes an unbridgeable chasm. Back on the third planet, the golden hour of humanity has long since reached its twilight. We are a species defined by our movement, by our refusal to stay still, but time is the one predator we could never outrun. The epoch of the Anthropocene, with all its noise and fury, its cathedrals and its conquests, is compressed into a thin radioactive line in the Earth's crust. The languages we spoke, the gods we feared, and the complex laws we derived to govern the motion of the planets have all surrendered to the inexorable pull of entropy. The atmosphere that once hummed with the signals of a global civilization is now silent, save for the whisper of the wind over a world that has forgotten it ever had a name. 5 billion years into the future, the sun begins its final agonizing transformation. The hydrogen in its core, the fuel that sustained the miracle of life for eons, is finally exhausted. In a desperate bid to remain ignited, the star begins to fuse helium, its outer layers swelling outward in a catastrophic expansion. The Earth, the stage upon which every human drama was performed, is devoured. The oceans that nurtured the first primordial cells are boiled into steam, and the rocky mantle is ground into dust by the very light that once gave it warmth. This is not a tragedy in the eyes of the cosmos. It is merely the mechanism of a star fulfilling its destiny. The sun becomes a red giant, a bloated crimson ghost of its former self, before finally shedding its outer shell in a magnificent planetary nebula. What remains is a white dwarf, a dense, cooling ember no larger than the planet it once scorched, destined to fade over trillions of years into a black invisible remnant. In this far future, the Milky Way itself is no longer the spiral gallery we once mapped. It has collided with the Andromeda Galaxy, their stars dancing in a slow gravitational waltz that scatters solar systems like grains of sand. The constellations that guided our ancestors have vanished, their patterns unravelled by the shifting tides of the galactic merger. In this new chaotic sky, the Three-Eye Atlas continues its journey. It is now a ghost ship, its power source decayed, its instruments cold, yet it remains the only piece of the old world that has not been recycled by the furnace of the stars. It is a relic of a time when matter dared to become conscious, when the dust of the earth stood up and asked why the light was fading. We often imagine the end of the universe as a sudden catastrophe, a final curtain call, but the truth is far more melancholic. It is a slow thinning, a gradual departure of light from the void. One by one, the stars exhaust their fuel and go dark. The red dwarfs, the long-lived sentinels of the cosmos finally flicker and die. The black holes, those great devourers of space and time, begin to evaporate through the slow leak of radiation, eventually vanishing in a final, silent puff of energy. The tapestry of the universe, once vibrant with the colours of nebulae and the glow of galaxies, is stripped down to its barest threads. The void returns to the state it occupied before the first light ignited, a silent, eternal abyss where the very concepts of heat and motion have lost their meaning. Yet, in this landscape of total oblivion, the anomaly of our existence takes on a new significance. We were a glitch in the clockwork. The universe is a machine of terrifying precision, a system of cause and effect that tends always toward the equilibrium of the grave. But for a few million years, on a small rock orbiting an ordinary star, the universe refused to be a clock. It became a witness. Through our eyes, the cosmos was able to perceive its own majesty. Through our mathematics, it was able to calculate its own age. We were the sensory organs of a blind giant, a brief flash of lightning that allowed the abyss to see itself for a fraction of a second. The three-eye atlas, drifting in the intergalactic void, is the record of that moment. Even if no alien intelligence ever intercepts it, even if its metal hull is eventually eroded by the impact of stray atoms, the fact of its existence is an indelible mark on the history of the cosmos. It proves that the void is not merely a place of emptiness, but a place where something can happen. It is a monument to the possibility of the impossible. We were the species that looked at the shifting walls of the house and refused to be afraid. We were the dreamers who tried to build a ladder to the stars using only our curiosity and our courage. There is a profound, melancholic optimism in this realization. We are not the masters of the universe, and we were never meant to be its permanent residents. We are a beautiful, transient melody in a symphony that is mostly silence. Our disappearance is not a failure, it is the natural conclusion of our part in the cosmic drama. The tragedy would not be our end, but the possibility that we never existed at all, that the universe had remained a dark, unobserved machine, grinding away in the shadows without anyone to marvel at its complexity. As the three-eye atlas leaves the last vestiges of the galactic disk and enters the true emptiness between the clusters, it carries with it the essence of our defiance. It is a sentinel of the void, a tiny, fragile emissary from a world of light and sound. It serves as a reminder that for one brief, glorious epoch, the silence was broken. The universe is a vast and indifferent mechanism, but it is also a place where a glitch can become a soul, where a spark can become a civilization, and where a temporary inhabitant can leave a permanent mark on the infinite. We are gone, and the stars are dying, but the mystery remains. We were here, we saw the light, and we found it beautiful. In the end, perhaps that is the only truth that was ever worth knowing. The dark may be eternal, but it can never erase the fact that, for a moment, we were the light that looked back,